thing going.
One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday. This is the best day of the week, and not just because it's 2 weeks before Christmas, but it is also the day that the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show. My name is Jim Lakely. I'm Executive Vice President of the Heartland Institute. We are an organization that has been around for 41 years, and we are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. The Heartland Institute and this show bring you the data, the science, the truth that counters the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed your entire life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will do us a favor and bring friends to view this live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And also like, share, and subscribe. And be sure to leave your comments underneath this video. We read them. We really do. But these actions all convince YouTube's very mysterious algorithm to smile upon this program. And that gets the show in front of even more people. And as a reminder, because big tech and the legacy media are not big fans of the way we cover climate and energy policy on this program, Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. So if you want to support this program, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. And you can join other friends of this program who help support it so it gets out to the world every single week. We also want to thank our streaming partners who help us spread the word about this show. JunkScience.com, CFACT, What's Up With That, the CO2 Coalition, and our friends at Heartland UK Europe. We have a big show today and a very special guest, so let's get started. Today we have with us, as usual, Anthony Watts, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change, What's Up With That. Sterling Burnett, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who in his day job is the director of the Arthur C. Robinson Center for Climate and Energy Policy, Environment Policy at the Heartland Institute, and Linnea Lueken, Research Fellow for Energy Environment Policy at Heartland. And of course, we're glad to have him back this week. Andy Singer, our producer behind the curtain, making the show look and flow great. And we are very happy to welcome back a friend of the show and a friend of ours, and the Carbon King. Let's just say that. His name is Jason Isaac. He's the founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute and the world's greatest advocate of the high carbon lifestyle. Jason, you are probably the only person I know in my circle of friends who actually wants a lump of coal in his stocking come Christmas.
And want millions of people around the planet, actually billions when you think about it, to have that lump of coal for Christmas. They need it to heat their homes or their huts or whatever they're living in, but they need it to power an affordable and reliable future. So yes, I hope that billions of people around the world get access to coal. They certainly are in China. There's no question about that. But yes, absolutely. Coal for Christmas is great for human prosperity and flourish.
Very good. Yeah, we'd have to bring around every Christmas just for the coal angle, I think. We're going to do that every year. All right. Well, we got a big show. There it is. He's wearing the coal. Make America
again.
Make America coal again.
There it is. Get it around the world.
Yep. If we had a merch shop here on this channel, we might sell that. So maybe one day, maybe that's a 2026 thing. That'd be great. All right.
Wildly jealous of that hat.
Excellent. All right. Well, we got a lot to cover today. And oh gosh, I almost forgot. Happy 10-year anniversary, everyone, for the Paris Climate Accord. That was agreed to 10 years ago today. I just saw that on X before we came on live.
Isn't that great? They accomplished so much in that 10 years.
Is there a chance we can? I'm not often an advocate for divorce, but is there a chance we can get it annulled?
That's what Trump did, didn't he? He's pulled us out of that darn thing twice.
No, I think neutered is the correct term for Trump.
Yeah. Well, to me, that news was sobering because I was there in Paris when that was signed. And I cannot believe it was 10 years ago.
Wow.
So that's just mind blowing.
196 countries committed to worship a false god, and it has led to their detriment all the way around.
Yes, but they're all sinners, Jason. They're all sinners.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go. We're gonna start with our as we always do on this program, very popular segment on this show. It's called the Crazy Climate News of the Week. Hit it, Andy. Thank you very much, Bill. Now, who also believed was in Paris that year, 10 years ago. All right, we're all getting old. I've titled this segment Queen of Coal, and this comes from the Daily Caller, and it was all over social media this week. Netflix to platform film about trans woman who yearns for the coal mines. Netflix is releasing a movie called The Queen of Coal to American audiences on December 19th, which will follow a trans woman and the individual pursues their goal of working in the mines. The Netflix description notes that the Spanish film follows a trans woman that must navigate a town steeped in superstition and patriarchy to conquer their dreams of earning a wage in the coal mines. Though the production was created by the Spanish company Morena Films, Netflix is set to add the film to its American repertoire right before Christmas, according to a banner on the company's website. So yeah, this film is, I'm sure it's sure to be a holiday classic in America and homes across the country. It stars Lux Pascal, who is a trans woman, meaning she was born a man, who is the sibling of famous Hollywood actor Pedro Pascal. You know what? Let's just play the trailer, which is dubbed in English. If you would, please, Andy.
Everyone believes it's the presence of the Black Widow, the woman who broke the superstition and went into the mine on a day that wasn't.
Oops, I'll start at the beginning. Sorry.
Some of the guys say they've seen a shadow. Others say it's just a beam of light. The truth is, everyone believes it's the presence of the Black Widow, the woman who broke the superstition and went into the mine on a day that wasn't St. Barbara's Day.
It's always been my dream to work in the mine.
Rodriguez, Carlos, on the ground. They sent the baggage.
Do you feel safe in that work environment? I need a job, not friends. To them, I'm just another guy.
You're not a guy and you're not like them. You ever thought about leaving this place?
I was born wanting to leave.
Good thing you didn't. Carla Barbara Rodriguez, ID number 37255313.
If you say you're a woman now, then you'll have to do women's work.
Oh.
And you know this company assigns different jobs to women.
It's not fair what they're doing to you.
No one can take away what you've earned, Carly. You earned it. It's yours.
I'm a miner, Violet. A miner.
A miner. Miss Carbon is what it was titled in Spanish. So
it seems that Jason's getting his wish and everybody's getting a coal for Christmas because this is coming out on Netflix.
Giving new meaning to energy transition. Oh. Yeah, I'm clear that I, as the carbon king, I've not changed my identity, and I'm not going into the mines in Argentina dressing up like a woman, like this actor is. Just absolutely appalling, disgusting that Netflix is even airing this garbage. But fortunately for me, I canceled the subscription weeks ago and enjoying the freedom since.
Well, Jason, there aren't a lot of movies made that glorify the coal industry, right? And you're not willing just to take this one as a W?
Yeah, no. Yeah, the W is in women. No, not so much. No, I'll pass. It's just there's just too much virtue signaling and just DEI and ESG all wrapped together in one.
I just don't understand how many premises they're trying to cram into this one movie. It seems they're trying to do the like women are put down by the industry by like the world or whatever angle. They're also trying to do the trans people are put down by the world angle. They're also trying to do the like I don't even know what the coal mine angle is on this even. This
I can tell you the coal mine angle.
What they do, they get a man to dress up as a woman, and
it's
just
toxic masculinity coal industry.
You can talk about toxic masculinity, but it is not demeaning the coal industry. She aspires to be a coal miner. It is not calling coal awful, evil, or dirty. It is pointing out that in this instance, this is a step up for anyone who gets that job. This provides good wages. It produces energy that the people want. And you say what you will about the trans angle or the women angle, the DEI angle. What it is not doing is demeaning coal and its value to that community.
I knew Sterling would see the bright side of this movie. I knew I could count on you for that.
It's an odd thing when I'm the optimist, but there you go.
Right.
Well, I mean, I found it funny actually while watching that. I grabbed the clip. I think of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. There's a line in there where Donner, I think, is that that's man's work. When they want to go out and look for Rudolph, right? I say that at my house a lot. That's man's work, like putting out the lights outside Christmas. But Linnea, but I thought of you, Linnea. It's like, you worked on you worked with roughnecks out there on a drilling rig in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know how many women would aspire to that job. Credit to you, but aspire to work in the mines seems weird.
I mean, I'm one of those weirdos who would rather be working in the mines than doing whatever paper pushing thing it seems like they're trying to get her to do. But the mines back then, though, I don't know what time period this is supposed to be. I also don't know if the original. So it seemed like this might be like based on a true story or something.
Yeah,
and I don't know if the true story is that it's a trans person who was desperate to work in the mines. And then they transitioned and everyone's like, oh, turns out actually now you can't work in the mines because you're really a real woman now. Okay. But yeah, I don't know. It's just the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I will say that the only people who have ever presumed anything about my job have been leftists, presuming that I must have been like treated terribly or something working offshore. They're like, wow, how difficult. It wasn't, the attitude of my male coworkers that was the difficulty. It was, the fact that the work is hard, that was the difficulty. And if anything, the guys like out there bend over backwards to make sure that, female coworkers are safe and well regarded and everything. It's sometimes a little bit too much, like they're oversensitive about it, but it's I don't know. It's a crazy thing. It looks like it's a well shot film. That's about all I can say about it.
It's honestly an odd thing that this movie can get made at this time, not because of the trans angle, but because of the coal angle.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have said it in a trans woman not being able to work in some other field, right? In a steel mill or something else that's not quite as demeaned as coal. Now, like you say, it's probably based on a real story, but unless they get a lot of commentary around it, saying, well, you shouldn't, of course, coal is bad now. We used it back then, unless you get stuff like that. The fact that it's made today showing coal to be a positive thing for a society, that surprises me.
Yeah. Well, there are many layers to this and we could dig deeper, but we're going to exit this mine. We're going to get in the elevator and get out and move on to our next item, which is, I've titled it, Take My Wife, Please. And this comes to us from the style section of the New York Times. I just screwed up my notes. Give me a second. All right. And so this is kind of a Dear Greta letter, as it were. The reader writes, now this is going to take a lot of reading, but believe me, it'll be worth it. The reader writes, my wife has become an eco-warrior. She has strong feelings about the environment and other people's carbon footprints. She challenges our friends repeatedly about their lifestyle choices. I agree with her in principle, but I can't support her moral outrage. It's become clear to me that her behavior is off-putting to many people we see, and it's uncomfortable for me and for them when she raises the same issues repeatedly. She seems to care more about the climate crisis than our relationships. I try to see this issue through my wife's eyes, so I understand her need to speak up, but it's so uncomfortable. Help! All right. And so philosopher Kwame Anthony Appiah answers this letter in the style section of the New York Times. I'm going to assume that you have raised this issue with your wife privately and have not made much headway. It would be odd to keep quiet about your growing discomfort and that of your friends, only to broach the subject with me. Still, I have a suggestion that may be persuasive to your wife. Offer her an alternative that increases the chances of changing people's behavior. She probably knows already, but may need to be reminded, that there are few turnoffs more potent than being bullied by moral crusaders. I wouldn't start there, of course. I would begin by praising her rightfully for her commitment to an important issue that receives little practical attention. Among my friends and neighbors, anyway. We believe in human-caused climate change, but we are not altering our transportation diets or energy habits to reduce our carbon footprints. So, after expressing solidarity, turn to her presentation. Tell her you've seen your friends pull back from when she becomes more, pull back from her when she becomes strident. Remind her that she isn't likely to shame people into making lasting changes in their behavior. And ask her to consider posing her important question more gently. How can we call something a crisis and still not take steps to ameliorate it? A soft conversation here, with talking and listening on every side, is more likely to change people's habits than an angry attack is. All right, so there's your Dear Greta letter and response. Sterling, you have been very happily married man for quite a while. Please tell us if these two crazy kids have a chance.
Going on 23 years. Honestly, I wouldn't put up with either one of them. I don't know if they have a chance. I guess it depends on how persuasive this guy is into stopping his wife from being a moral scold. And it's going to be difficult for him, I think, since he also has drank the climate Kool-Aid and believes that it is a disaster that needs that marriage. It might help if he bought for her Climate at a Glance, our newest edition, second edition, because it might lessen her stridency. She might come to her senses. Maybe he could come to his senses and be able to convince her. I know the thing that's helped me. I don't have many relatives who are crazy about climate change. My wife certainly isn't. She, look, she lives with me. She hears every day when I go off on something on TV. Imagine that I go off on something, but she hears me when the news story says something, and I just call them a liar and explain why it's wrong. And so she doesn't. But sometimes I have younger relatives who are of the age that they are convinced about almost every new crisis that comes along and terror. And for me, I got a quick answer when they say, how can you believe this? How can you not worry? I say, hand me your phone. Give me your Kindle. What for? Well, I'm taking it away from you because you're killing the earth according to you. Your position is energy use kills the earth. That charging your phone and using your phone is killing the earth. That the TV you watch is killing the earth. I want to make you carbon neutral. I'm going to take it away from you. Suddenly, they are less strident. They suddenly see, I don't know that they see the light about the harms of climate change, but they certainly aren't going to bring it up in front of me again.
Sterling, you would make a lousy advice columnist. So we'll skip over you.
I disagree. It's effective. That's what an advice columnist should be. It's effective.
Yeah, I would tell the husband, or if I were the husband, I would say, I hear you. I understand your concerns. Let's live a low carbon lifestyle for a couple of weeks. I'll make the commitment to you and travel. You can look at our world and data maps and see which societies, which places have low carbon intensity. You could go to Malawi. I mean, it's probably a beautiful place to travel for a couple of weeks. You could join other women around the world and help them walk and collect water, because those people that are living a low carbon lifestyle, they're walking countless hours. And UNICEF says it's over 200 million hours a day that women spend walking to collect water. So this guy should ask his wife, how many hours do you spend a day walking to collect water? How far do you walk? The average is it's over 3 miles per woman. So she's probably bringing that average down by having to walk to the refrigerator or the faucet or to the store to get her freshly bottled water that's been flown in from France. But encourage them to go live a low carbon lifestyle. And it's absolutely appalling. If they make it the 2 weeks, I would be surprised.
There was a Law and Order episode, and I won't get into the mystery, the murder of it, but it involved a couple, a woman who got killed, but they were living the low carbon lifestyle in New York City. So they cut off their plumbing. They were growing at a community garden a lot of their vegetables. They'd given up meat. They'd given up processed foods. It was interesting to see the sacrifices they were making, especially since it turned out that the wife was sneaking out and using toilets elsewhere, not using a bucket, that she had a car that she would drive when she wanted to go somewhere. So you might be onto something there, Jason. Maybe you're a better advice columnist. Let's see what they do. All I know is on the Law and Order episode, they weren't living what they preached. And I would wager that this lady is not living what she preaches.
You're cheating on me with the toilet outside our marriage is never something I thought I'd hear on this show.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Some people have said, oh, that'd be a great show. Film people living a low carbon lifestyle and let people know what it looks like. That's why I tell people I live a high carbon lifestyle. I think the rest of the world should too. It's where you have economic prosperity. And with that, you get environmental leadership. And I finally looked at someone, I said, the show already exists. And I'm like, it does? And I'm like, yeah, it's called Naked and Afraid. Yeah. And it's absolutely appalling. And people lose a lot of weight in a very short period of time or they tap out. If people want to go for it, go for it. But they'll find that they really enjoy the pleasantries of running water, which we're number one in access to safe and clean drinking water here in the United States. Something that our Secretary of Energy points out frequently, that there's about 1 billion people on the planet that get to live the Western world and society like we do. Clean water, clean air, access to affordable, reliable electricity, although it's growing less affordably around the world because of the Paris Climate Accords. There's 7 billion people on the planet that don't. I mean, half of those get enough electricity in a year that it would take to power one of our refrigerators. That's all they get access to. And it's just because it's funny because a lot of Americans are having 2 refrigerators and they put one of them in the garage, like the least insulated place in the house. So that refrigerator has to work extra overtime to pull more electricity from the grid to keep the contents inside cold and frozen. I mean, it's just laughable that some of the things that we take for granted that people around the planet, 7 billion people, like, wait, you don't have just one refrigerator, you have 2, and one of them's in the least insulated room in the house. Like, wow, that's amazing. They would love to be able to experience that. And the way they get to is with coal, natural gas, and nuclear powered, affordable, reliable energy. Unfortunately, some countries are being bribed not to expand those sources of electric generation.
Yeah. So here's what I would do to solve this problem if it were my wife. I would, since Christmas is coming up, I would create for her a very nice portfolio of a low carbon vacation. I would list all the activities and things and places that she would visit in this low carbon vacation and show her this as a gift for Christmas and explain to her that I am so impressed with your commitment to saving the planet. I've got you this vacation, and no, you're not going to fly overseas. We're putting you on a low carbon sailboat. And when you get to Somalia or wherever it might be, you'll get to carry water on your head to experience the low carbon lifestyle. And as a bonus, you're going to get to live in an unconditioned grass hut. And, and just outline all these fun things that you would get to do in a low carbon lifestyle vacation. And that might make it sink in.
And by the way, she gets to bike to the port to get on the sailboat.
I want to point this out too. First of all, there's something about men who are like this, who are so like kind of weak and timid, that infuriates me a little bit. But picture this: their entire friend group their friends, the husband, the wife, they all believe that climate is a crisis, that it's a world-ending crisis. And only the wife thinks that they should do something about it. From their perspective, actually, she's being kind of like rational here. She's just, kind of blowing her top about it, which you shouldn't do. But what always confuses me, or not confuses me, but like frustrates me with the climate change believers is, like Sterling pointed out, they're not willing to do anything about it.
Right.
If I believed, I believe that trash in the environment is really bad for the environment. I think it's a terrible thing. So I don't throw my trash on the ground. I pick up trash when I'm out fishing or something and I see that somebody threw stuff in a river or whatever. I go and pick it up. When I go out boating or something with my dad, we'll always drive. If we see, like a big bottle or something floating in the ocean, we'll go and fetch it. So I believe that this is bad for the environment. And so I do stuff about it that actually, makes a physical, not a huge difference, but like something. Their friends are more interested in like going, yes, and nodding along gravely to NPR or whatever on their radio on the way to work in the morning, but they're not willing to take the bus the way that NPR is telling them to do. It's just, these people are not serious.
Yeah. I mean, I have, let's just say I have mixed friends, those who we don't agree on a lot of stuff, and we do things like play tennis together, have dinner together, exchange gifts together, and it's not a problem. Obviously, the woman, the woman, actually feel almost sorry for her. I mean, if you can't keep your mouth shut about your politics every time you see your friends, you need help, man. You need you need help. That is not a healthy way to live. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Anthony is now going to be moonlighting as the director of the Board of Tourism in Somalia. He will be offering fresh packages for a low carbon lifestyle. So you got to look at
actually, I might actually put some of those up on eBay or Etsy just to see what happens.
Anthony's low carbon lifestyle travel
planner. No, travel planner.
Yeah. You can't
get it. Thought it was bad. Now just wait till you get there.
Yeah, it's a one-way ticket because you won't survive long enough to come back, but you're gonna have time while you're there.
Yeah. And you won't be able to apply for it on your app either, obviously, for obvious reasons. All right.
Yes.
Speaking of that sort of thing, our next item here is from our friends at the Communist Guardian UK newspaper. $5 billion of damage per hour. So the headline is food and fossil fuel production causing $5 billion of environmental damage per hour. Let me read from this a little bit. The unsustainable production of food and fossil fuels creates $5 billion of environmental damage per hour, according to a major UN report. Ending this harm was a key part of the global transformation of governance, economics, and finance required, quote, before collapse becomes inevitable, the experts said. The Global Environment Outlook, GEO report, which is produced by 200 researchers for the UN Environment Program, said the climate crisis, destruction of nature, and pollution could no longer be seen as simply environmental crises. All right, now, stop me if you've heard this before, guys. Quote, the science is good. The solutions are known. What is required is the courage to act at the scale and speed that history demands, said one of the authors, adding that the window for action was rapidly narrowing. Yeah, all the time. The GEO report emphasized that the costs of action were much less than the costs of inaction in the long term, and estimated the benefits from climate action alone would be worth $20 trillion a year by 2070 and $100 trillion per year by 2100. Quote, we need visionary countries and private sector companies to recognize that they will make more profit by addressing these issues rather than ignoring them. One of the biggest issues was the $45 trillion a year in environmental damage caused by the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas, and the pollution and destruction of nature caused by industrial agriculture, the report said. The food system carried the largest costs at $20 trillion, with transport at $13 trillion and fossil fuel powered electricity at $12 trillion. These costs, called externalities by economists, must be priced into energy and food to reflect their real price and shift consumers toward greener choices. Quote, so we need social safety nets. We need to make sure that the poorest in society are not harmed by an increase in costs, unquote. The report suggests measures such as a universal basic income, taxes on meat, and subsidies for healthy plant-based foods. Linnea, let me start with you here. We can kind of break this down. $5 billion an hour is $840 billion a week, $3.6 trillion a month, and $44 trillion a year. For comparison, for everybody here, the combined annual GDP of the United States, Canada, and Mexico, all of North America, is $34 trillion. And the annual GDP of the entire European Union is $21 trillion. Do they really expect us to take this study seriously and to base public policy on it?
No, it's just more media fodder. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one because it's always stuff like this, right? Yeah, no, I'll pass. I'll pass on this one.
All right. I mean,
Okay.
Go ahead, Anthony. I mean, there's so many tropes in that in what I read. It's the idea that it's cheaper in the long term to spend trillions of dollars right now to prevent a catastrophe that they can't prove is actually real.
Right. Well, you also got to figure in the fact that, let's say you spend $1 trillion or more right now, as the UN suggests. Well, just look how effective those UN programs have been in Africa and so forth. And, the money never gets to the people that actually needs it, or it's a tiny speck of the money so that they can say, yes, they're getting aid. The rest of it goes to administration and travel and parties and all this other horse shit that the UN does. But this is really what it's all about. The UN is they have a completely perfect track record in climate of being able to accomplish nothing. And this is illustrated by the COP conferences. We showed this graph a week or two ago. And, we've had 30 COP conferences and the UN hasn't been able to do squat. And this is just another modeling study that says, oh, well, if we figure in this and we figure in this and we type in that and we add this variable and then we crank this knob, boom, it's $5 billion a day. And that's all this is. It's another scare story pushed by The Guardian. And I want to say that on our website, climaterealism.com, we will have a complete review of this new study that they've put out. We'll talk about how baseless it is. And I want to point out that the UN, all the way back in 1989, went on record with the Associated Press and said entire nations will be wiped off the face of the earth because of climate change-induced sea level rise. Well, they're still there.
By 2020, 25 years ago, they should be gone.
Yeah. So just don't listen to these people. They're just complete numbnuts. They have nothing except an opinion. That's it. They have no substance.
I would point out they have not done anything to change the trajectory of emissions or temperatures. They have made dozens of predictions. Not a single one of them has proven correct or accurate. If someone tells you something over and over again, different things, but is always wrong, pretty soon you stop going to that person for advice or trusting what they recommend. Not PBS, not the AP, not the mainstream media. They please tell us more disaster. We never get tired of being wrong, evidently. But the thing that really bothers me the most about this, the lies don't bother me because they're going to lie. Liars are going to lie. But it offends me that academics, people who've never had to make a profit, a living, who sit in their ivory towers or get paid by some bureaucracy, but don't actually have to go out and work. They think they know better than entrepreneurs, than private companies, what will make them money than the people who are actually out there having to compete and satisfy customers. Oh, they're just too stupid to know. They'd make trillions of dollars if they did what we said. Instead, they're going to lose everything. Look, I think Exxon's done pretty well for itself for the most part. I think the big tech guys that are demanding more and more energy, they've done pretty well for themselves without his advice telling them they need to give up all this.
Yeah. Jason, they're basically saying here in this piece, in this report, that we have to freeze in the dark and starve to death to save the planet. I mean, there's no other way to look at it.
No, and they've been quite successful because freezing deaths are on the rise in the EU. They're getting astronomical numbers. It was funny during the last presidential campaign, the Biden administration would say, oh, heat-related deaths are the biggest cause of death, and that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, cold-related deaths are much more dangerous. They're 40 times that of a heat-related death. They're more prevalent, and colder temperatures are more dangerous. And look at what they're doing. The food system in Europe. I was just looking at some headlines earlier this week, and food costs in Europe over the last 5 years are up 50%, and they're blaming climate change, which they continuously to leave out the word policy after the phrase climate change, because it's climate change policy that is leading to this increase in cost. The cost of natural gas has skyrocketed. The cost of fertilizer has skyrocketed over the last 4 years. The average is up 40%. Over 70% of fertilizer plants in the EU are offline right now. So what's happening is, in Germany was trying to find a way around this a couple of years ago by importing fertilizer from the United States. So that increased the cost of fertilizer here in our country. And so then what happened is the EU found out about this. They created the CBAM, the cross-border adjustment mechanism, this carbon tax on fertilizer that was being imported from the US to make it as expensive as it would be if they had just bought it in the EU. And so food costs are skyrocketing and food production is decreasing because of climate change policy. So you're absolutely right. This is the whole agenda of the UN is it's fewer people on the planet by astronomical proportions. And one way to get there is less people, and you do that by starving your population or freezing them out. It's absolutely appalling. It needs to stop. I'm grateful the current administration is really hammering the EU, but the EU and the UN, just two organizations that are absolutely worthless and need to go away if mankind is to survive.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Absolutely right.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to our next item here before we get to our main topic that's in the thumbnail today. And this is Blue State Energy Blues. This comes from our friends over at the Institute for Energy Research, a new report called Blue States High Rates. Let me read a little bit from it. Federal data show U.S. electricity prices increased by 27% from January 2021 through January 2025 by an additional 11% and by an additional 11% from January through September 2025, placing additional strain on Americans' finances. Electricity prices are especially high in traditional liberal areas of the country. In total, 86% of states with electricity prices above the national average in the continental U.S. are reliably blue, having voted for the Democratic nominee for president in the 2020 and 2024 elections. In contrast, 80% of the 10 states with the lowest electricity prices are reliably red, defined as having voted for the Republican candidate in those contests. This report explains how state-level energy policies primarily shape electricity and highlights 5 states, California, Florida, Louisiana, Kentucky, and New York, to illustrate how these policies affect affordability. And yeah, Andy, thank you very much for putting that very helpful chart from IEA to illustrate this point. The deepest blue state there on that map is California, with cents per kilowatt hour of, I guess, at least 38 cents. And the reddest state looks to be North Dakota, but basically right down the middle of the country. Any state that's not run by liberal wackos have very affordable energy prices. And then there's no need to bring this up on the screen, but I also saw yesterday on Fox News, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum told viewers, quote, natural gas in Pennsylvania is going to be about $1 in the summer, and it might be $2 in the winter, but it'll be $12 in New England because New England isn't getting their gas from Pennsylvania. They blocked all the pipelines from Pennsylvania. And one last quick thing before we go to Jason, since this is right up his alley. I want to play this clip. Lefties are always telling us that green energy is cheaper and deny that energy costs are higher in the blue states. And they also do things like this, blaming Trump. Here's Democrat Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey.
I'm asking now for the President of the United States to do his damn job and figure out a way to get heating assistance out to people who need it.
Jason, you don't need heating assistance if you have low energy prices and you allow natural gas to be pumped into freaking New England, do you?
No, it's absolutely right. It's funny. There's an LNG export terminal in Maryland. There's an LNG import terminal near Boston. And you can't take LNG from Maryland to Boston because of the Jones Act, a different issue. So they're having to import LNG in the Northeast from the Trinidad and Tobago. Interestingly enough, in 2017, they imported a tanker from Russia. So not only was the U.S. dependent on, or at least the northeastern communist United States was dependent on Russia for natural gas, EU is. I mean, the EU has imported more natural gas from Russia ever in 2024. Last year, absolutely incredible numbers of how many billions of dollars they're sending to Russia. And it's just incredible that the northeastern United States won't allow pipelines, the safest, most responsible way to transport energy to be built in their states to get affordable, reliable energy. Yet they come begging to the federal government for handouts from taxpayers in responsible states that actually can get energy to our homes and to our refineries and to our electric generation facilities, because we believe in infrastructure like pipelines to get that energy to where it needs to be. So they've completely put up a wall, if you will, and not allowing permits, not allowing these pipelines to be built that could significantly lower the cost for the northeastern United States. It's interesting. You'll see sometime this summer, the Northeast will be burning more trash to produce electricity than they'll be getting from any of their so-called renewable resources. So I love it when that happens, because they're burning trash to make electricity, and they're completely dependent on that and what thermal generation they have from nuclear, natural gas, and coal.
Jim, you were wrong a little bit when you said it's affordable in the red states. It's because prices are rising there too. That's what this study showed. Prices are rising there too, largely because they're all stuck in regional transmission authorities where they're subsidizing the cost of energy for the blue states. And our friend Luke Starkenberg Starkenberg is back. He hasn't been here in a while. Glad to see him back. But he made a comment about Texas turning green. And you know what? He's right. But what he doesn't tell you is the full story. We got wind, we've got solar, and we have the highest rising cost in our entire region. Every other state that's not investing in these technologies has lower costs than Texas, and we started from a lower base. As we've added wind and solar, our costs have risen. Why? The wind blows in West Texas, but you got to build billions and billions of dollars worth of transmission lines from West Texas to ship it where they don't need it in some small city in West Texas. They need it in Houston and Austin. So you build hundreds of thousands of miles of transmission lines. You lose power all along the line, so you don't get nearly as much power as generated as delivered, and it raises your cost and makes your power less reliable. We have more blackouts and brownouts in Texas now than we've ever had in history as we've added more wind and solar. So he's right. We're going green. Our legislators being bought and paid for by the green energy industry, fighting every change that would fix that problem, that would end subsidies for wind and solar. But we're getting it, and we are getting it.
I'd say we're going green. It's gangrene, and that's because we've got this on our grid here in Texas: wind, solar, and batteries. In 2021, during Winter Storm Uri, 33% of our grid was wind and solar. There weren't a lot of batteries on at the time. Now, over 50% of our grid in Texas is wind, solar, and batteries. We are coming completely dependent on things that are incredibly expensive and unreliable. We've shut down coal, woke companies like AEP, American Electric Power. Yeah, there's no American in that. It's more like Communist Electric Power. Have to virtue signal, they've shut down a good coal-fired power plant in East Texas. Granted, that's in the Southwest Power Pool. It's still in Texas, replacing it with wind and solar, things that don't work when we need them most. The Trump administration is correct in their definition of what energy is. It's in the National Energy Emergency Declaration, the executive order that came out on day one of this team. So yeah, in Sterling, we've spent over 100. The way our market is designed in Texas, it's directed. A lot of people say, "Oh, we spent, Texas spent." It's really not Texas. It's the Texas market is designed to waste billions of dollars, $130 billion on wind, solar, and batteries. It's only increasing. If our market was designed to favor reliability, we would have only spent about a tenth of that number, about $10 to $13 billion on hardening our lines, burying infrastructure like Florida has, and building new natural gas and coal generation, because that's where people could have made money on a grid that favors reliability, and our rates wouldn't be suffering. But that $130 billion has to be absorbed by somebody, and it's getting absorbed by ratepayers. A third of our, about 30% of our electric bills in Texas right now are to pay for transmission cost. That's transmission of high voltage power lines to bring electricity that's generated out in the middle of nowhere to get it hundreds of miles to where people are, when we should have a market that's designed to build generation near where the demand is. I love that these data centers, there's 2 stories on Fox News and Fox Business this morning talking about these transmission lines cutting through Maryland and Virginia to get unreliable power to data centers in Northern Virginia. I think the AI and the data centers that are being built are really waking people up to the realization that we need affordable, reliable power from coal, natural gas, and nuclear, and not from wind and solar, because these data centers are building on-site generation, or they're having to build massive power lines and transmission lines to get power from other states like Utah that are embracing coal, that are burning a lot of coal, while California's canceling contracts, hurting states like Utah and Arizona. So I think this data center and AI revolution, this renaissance that we're going through, is really exposing the weakness of unreliable taxpayer and Chinese dependent generation.
Jason, sorry, Sterling, I'm going to cut you off there for a second. Jason, I got to push back on you a little bit about what you said earlier about trash generation. I think that's a great technology.
It is.
I'd much rather, heck, why not make electricity out of trash instead of leaving it in the landfill? I think that's a terrific thing. It's one of the things that the Greens don't like. And yet countries like Japan make a lot of their electricity with it, and it works out well for them. It's not carbon neutral. I'll tell you that much.
But it's practically pollution free because of the pollution control technology, the bag houses and scrubbers. There's a power plant in South Texas that you can run tires through to produce electricity, which I love. That's great. We have a lot of tires as waste. Let's run them through a power plant and produce electricity. You're right. There's things that we turn into waste here in this country. We've been doing it for hundreds of years that make incredible products.
You could also burn wind turbine blades and make electricity with them that way.
I joke that all the ones in West Texas will be pressed into little pellets and put through a wood-fired power plant, probably somewhere in London, and they'll call it renewable.
I would just say that, the fix, you're right, reliability should be the key. And the fix should be not allowing power companies that want to build generation far away from the source to pass on the cost of transmission to ratepayers. You say, what's the solution? The solution is they have to absorb those costs. Amen. We don't allow them to pass it on. Yeah, or alternatively, you won't get the transmission built. Yeah. That's right. You're right. You won't get the transmission built. So they'll be building power that can't be hooked up to the grid. They can't afford that. They don't get any money then. So the other solution, and I know that you've been behind this, Jason, or you were when you were in the legislature, is that making the unreliables, the intermittent power sources, actually pay for their unreliability by the subsidies that go to them from the federal government being passed on to coal and natural gas that actually provide their power when the flow is going up and down because wind gusts, when the clouds come and the solar power drops off, or at night. That should count against them. And that would keep plants online that can't afford to stay online if they're only operating 70% of the time or 50% of the time because they're having to compete with wind and solar that bids in at zero due to subsidies.
Yep, and it's just going to grow in cost. We should be at nearly 40% of our bills coming up in the next couple of years will be to pay for that transmission. The generator should pay for the transmission to get it to their consumers, not you and I. Yep. So we've got a lot of work to do in the legislature. There should be cost allocation accordingly, that if you impose costs on the grid, you should pay for that. The generator should pay for that, not the consumers. So I'm optimistic going into the next Texas legislative session, which won't be until 2027. So we've got another year and a month before it even gets started. but we'll be working in the interim. Another thing that we've been working with our Public Utility Commission today, nearing 300 public comments in opposition to Blackstone, one of these woke financial advisors out of Wall Street that imposes their ESG agenda, their climate agenda on companies that they invest in, is looking to outright purchase Texas, New Mexico Power, a big power provider using solar and natural gas in West Texas and in New Mexico. And they have no business owning a company that's a public benefit, investor-owned utility in the state of Texas. If they want to pull their stuff off the grid, I guess go for it. But I don't want to see one of these companies that's embracing policies that are counter to Texas laws and our economic prosperity to have a hand, much less complete ownership of a power provider in this country, in this state. So we're pushing back to the Public Utility Commission. They'll make a decision December 15th here very soon. But we're generating comments in opposition to that purchase, and hopefully we'll get some policymakers to raise some fingers of concern as well.
All right. Very good discussion. I appreciate that, guys. Let's move on. We have our big main topic today, and it's also, we've had a lot of good news on the Climate Realism Show the last several episodes, maybe for an entire year here. And this is that the EPA is exiting the climate alarm business. Comes from the New York Times. EPA erases mention of humans causing climate change from some web pages. And as you might imagine, the New York Times is not very happy about it. I'll read a little bit for you. The Environmental Protection Agency has quietly removed the fact that human activity is driving climate change from a handful of pages on its website. The information was deleted from one web page titled Causes of Climate Change, and another that tracks the impacts of the global warming in the United States. The change comes as the Trump administration takes aggressive action to boost oil, gas, and coal, the burning of which is the main driver of global warming. I have to get a buzzer drop for every time there's a falsehood in this story. There'll be a lot of buzzes. Mr. Trump, who calls climate change a hoax, has eliminated climate regulations and made it easier to develop fossil fuels and harder to build renewable energy like wind and solar power. Now, the New York Times, of course, quotes an alarmist and nobody from the realist side in this story, and that's what they get. Actually, it's what they get paid to do. Quote, EPA is trying to bury the evidence of human-caused climate change. Rachel Cletus, the senior policy director for the Climate and Energy Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists, a nonprofit science advocacy organization. Bridget Hirsch, a spokesman for Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator, said the Trump administration is focused on protecting human health rather than what she called, quote, left-wing political agendas. Quote, this agency no longer takes marching orders from the climate cult, Ms. Hirsch said in a statement. She noted that the older web pages have been archived and are still available online. The internet's forever. That's the trope. I'll just say here that the story in the New York Times goes on to note that among the pages removed were one on climate change indicators, which is like trends about heat waves, rising sea levels, and other effects. And that's a good thing, because that should be replaced by climate at a glance, which does not show any indicators that are quote unquote bad. And the best part of this, the page titled Causes of Climate Change, I think I have the link there for you, Andy. They have a page called Causes of Climate Change, and it doesn't have any mention of human beings at all. They have variations of solar activity cause climate change, variations in the Earth's orbit and rotation, etc. But human CO2 emissions are not listed among those things here. Now, Anthony, I want to start with you here. The New York Times propaganda piece does mention that, quote, elsewhere on the EPA site, human causes of global warming are still noted. There's a page buried somewhere called Future of Climate Change. But this is still good news, right? I mean, because no other president would have done this except for President Trump.
Yeah, it is good news. And, I am amused by all the caterwauling that's out there in the media and the NGOs and the activists and the McKibbinites and all those people. They're caterwauling about, oh, no, humans are not to blame by the EPA. Well, tough noogies, there's a big component of natural variation in climate change, which they've been ignoring for decades. And, what this is focusing on, and I went in and read the EPA website, and we just showed it to you there. It doesn't say, there's no effect from carbon dioxide. It doesn't say that, there's not warmer temperatures this century. None of that stuff is missing. The only thing that's missing is that humans are the direct cause. And these people that are whining all about it hate themselves, hate humanity so much that they feel that has to be in there, because we're to blame. We're awful. We're terrible. We need to change. And you need to change too. And that's the most important part about it. They're all about you need to change. And so, it's just a big tempest in a teapot, in a teacup, I mean. Look, we've got all these different graphs. We've got all these different facts. It's highly well referenced. It's just as well referenced, if not better, than our Climate at a Glance webpage. And so, the only thing it's missing is humans are to blame. And what's the big deal? There's plenty of other places that you can find, like The Guardian every day, and the New York Times every day, and the Washington Post every day saying humans are to blame and you need to change.
Anthony needs his own miter.
I know. I need a miter.
I just want to say that it sounds to me that the Trump administration, since the New York Times admitted that there are still some sites on the EPA site that acknowledge climate change as a danger, that it's a good start, but they still got work to do, because the evidence doesn't show climate change is destroying humanity. Any speculation about the future is based on flawed, notably acknowledged flawed climate models that have never been right before. The EPA should be citing data, and the data doesn't show alarming trends, and that's all that should be there. They shouldn't be speculating about huge things in the future based on climate models that fail. So,
Well, it's like
good start, Trump, but keep going.
Well, it's like when you read, the actual science reports from the IPCC, and also, like the state by state climate analysis that our, federal agencies have put out. The data is good, and it really doesn't point to anything very alarming at all. It's actually these are fairly well researched reports, but you get to these portions where they do like these introductory paragraphs and stuff where they are editorializing and speculating about future effects. They're like, well, in West Virginia, we haven't, there's been a very sharp decline in the number of very hot days over the last 100 years, but we expect that in the future, it'll reverse that trend. And it's, and they're experiencing unprecedented historic, warming in West Virginia or whatever. And then you look at the data and you're like, meh. I'm not very alarmed by this. And it's pretty incredible. I do want to point out on that website that we were showing earlier, the EPA website, the last sentence of the first paragraph says that the recent warming can't be attributed to natural causes alone. So it's not, and I don't know if they talk about, I didn't scroll all the way down on the page, but I don't know if they talk about urban heat effect and stuff, which is an obvious, clear, anthropogenic warming trend in cities and stuff.
Right.
Oh, it looks like they probably do. Oh, no, I don't know. But that's obviously a anthropogenic warming, at least locally. So I don't know. I'll take our wins where we get them.
Yeah, Jason Isaac, I know that you, me, and a lot of our friends in this business and in the business of promoting climate realism and sensible energy policy, we're kind of disappointed in the first Trump administration, where they seem to pay no attention at all they just basically left the alarmist propaganda on autopilot for, I think, pretty much the entire term. And as we see, there's still some room for improvement on these official government pages, but some progress is better than no progress, which is what we had in the first term.
Absolutely. And there were some people that were in the first administration that didn't support the president pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. They're embracing the need to reduce emissions rather than pollution, understanding that we'd become a world leader in clean air. And so they were kind of buying into the grift and the alarmist narrative, and I think really hindering the first Trump administration. And I'm so grateful because those people aren't in this current administration, which has been fantastic. Trump had 4 years to look at the scam and figure out that it is a scam and what the scam is based on. And the climate Kool-Aid is decarbonization, net zero. And so I think the most transformational effort that we're going to see coming out of the EPA is the rescission of the endangerment finding, something that was put in place by Obama bureaucrats in 2009 at the EPA that claimed that CO2 was harmful to human health and the environment, and thus gave the EPA the ability to regulate it under the Clean Air Act. Just this week, Doug Burgum was on a radio station in Louisiana talking about they couldn't build more coal in Wyoming without carbon capture. And the only reason they couldn't do that was because of the need to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Well, those are gone. The penalties have been taken away. They're getting rid of the endangerment finding. They're getting rid of the greenhouse gas reporting program, which surprisingly, we submitted comment in support of the Trump administration in getting rid of the greenhouse gas reporting program. And the American Petroleum Institute submitted comment in opposition to getting rid of the greenhouse gas reporting program because some of the majors have figured out a way that this increases cost on the smaller players so they can buy them up and when they're insolvent, or they've figured out a way to manipulate the system to their benefit and profit off of it. But it is contrary to Trump's energy dominance agenda to be opposing efforts to get rid of these rules that are detrimental to American energy dominance. So I'm very hopeful that we get rid of these programs, because that's the endangerment finding alone is the bedrock for what all climate policy sits on at the state and the federal level. And this is just a great thing. And the EPA is getting rid of the alarmism on their website and sticking to science. And some of the science now shows that the effect of man-made CO2 emissions does not appear to be strong enough to cause systematic changes in temperature fluctuations. And paleoclimatologists now believe that CO2 doesn't drive temperature, but vice versa. And that temperature increase is primarily caused by the sun. So we're seeing some more, credible science, not alarmist in nature, trying to drive us into starvation and freezing. So I'm grateful the EPA has done this. They're getting rid of the alarmism from the website. I've had the opportunity to work with some education curriculum companies and remove the alarmism from their textbooks and curriculum so that we can actually raise healthy and happy kids that aren't scared of some fake impending doom.
Anthony, take us home on this one.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things about climate alarmism is that the people that are climate alarmists don't want to read very much. They just simply go with what the narrative is. And so I did a little bit of searching, and guess what? Right here on the EPA website, and if you could magnify that, Andy, down below that, there it is. They talk about in the basics of climate change, most of the warming since 1950 has been caused by human emissions of greenhouse gases. And yet people are caterwauling that we're not blaming humanity enough. Well, there it is right there. Maybe they just haven't gotten to that yet. I don't know. But it points to the totalitarianism of climate change alarmism. They have to have everything everywhere exactly as they want it, or they start whining about it, and saying that we're being unfair and we're headed for doomsday and all these other things. The bottom line is that climate alarmism has failed miserably. Every prediction it's ever created has failed miserably. Yes, it's gotten a little bit warmer, but you can attribute a lot of that to natural changes. You can attribute a lot of that to changes in the how and where we measure temperature and the changes in the weather station and so forth. And by the way, I want to point out, you can find out all of that in our book, Climate at a Glance, 40 Prominent Climate Topics, now available on Amazon.com. We'd greatly appreciate it. I want to put out a personal appeal to every one of you watching here. Go to Amazon, look up Climate at a Glance, second edition, not the first edition, second edition. Buy it. It's only $14.95. Make it a stocking stuffer for somebody who's, off the rails about climate change. Maybe that guy should buy it for his wife that we talked about earlier. That'd be a great stocking stuffer for her. Anyhow, buy it, and please leave a comment about it, because the comments from verified buyers are the most persuasive. Thanks.
All right. Speaking of stocking stuffers, because this is the Christmas season, and I did mention the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special with that, that's man's work. But another iconic part of that special was Burl Ives singing Silver and Gold. And that is why we are happy to talk about the sponsor of this program, Advisor Metals. And I want to say the competition is on now, Linnea, for the greatest transitions of all time to our sponsor. If you listen to a lot of conservative shows, you hear tons of pitches for buying gold, silver, and other precious metals. And there are a ton of companies out there, but we want to tell you why you should trust our sponsor, and that is Advisor Metals. And it's the man who runs the company, and his name is Ira Bershatsky. He's the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he is not one of those guys who employs high-pressure sales tactics or deceptive marketing ploys like many that you find in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you're dealing in quality bullion, and that is so much better when it comes time to liquidate this asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you will have your investment sent discreetly right to your very home. Ira is advertising on the Climate Realism show because he is an America First patriot. He doesn't donate to Democrats. He refuses to work with proxies of the Chinese Communist Party. And he, like us, abhors the machinations and schemes of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And we are proud, very proud to have him as a sponsor. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio, or if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there, and Ira will make the process very easy for you. Again, climaterealismshow.com/metals. And be sure to tell them who sent you, because that helps this program and the Heartland Institute while you're helping yourself. All right. So we are now ready for Q&A, and we have a lot of questions. So take it away, Linnea.
All right. It is on, Jim. We'll see. We'll see. That was pretty good. I didn't see it coming. So very nice. We're definitely, who is it that made those Christmas specials? Last year, my mom and I sat and watched all of those. The Santa Claus Comes to Town.
Rankin and Bass.
Yeah.
Rankin and Bass, yep.
I grew up with those. I love those. All right. First comment that I wanted to show here is just one that I found very funny, which is from Tony Nicholson, who says, "Somebody call the EPA a cab." Yeah, that's right. Send her home. All right. And John points out that John Stossel put out a video the other day on Wikipedia, and it was interesting, or about Wikipedia, that was interesting, and he thinks that we should watch it. Well, we'll go look for that later, John. And then
I guess that's not one you had anything to do with, Linnea?
No, no, I'm still pending future projects with Stossel. So
One
this is
side
for
about
you.
Wikipedia, I want to comment. None of us, I have my own Wikipedia page because I'm a climate denier deluxe. You know, Jason, I suspect you'll probably get one soon. Linnea too. Sterling, I don't know whether they're going to give one to you or not. Maybe you're not ranty enough. But the bottom line is that these guys at Wikipedia put opinions about you that you have no control over. They will take a glimmer of some kind of a link to something and then expand on that and turn it into something that makes you look bad if you are a climate realist. And I've had to deal with my own Wikipedia page now for a decade, and everything on it is completely, well, not completely untrue, but a lot of it is very much exaggerated and made to look bad, and they completely ignore all the good things. And if any of us try to go in there and edit it, it immediately gets smacked down by the gatekeepers, you know, that are out in control there. It's just amazing. Yeah, see there, the only thing I got to contribute to my own page was my picture. Seriously. And I had to do that through a third party. They wouldn't take it from me directly. So, you know, it's Wikipedia, when it comes to, you know, any kind of content that has any kind of a political nature to it is bad. It's just bad. That's all I can say about it.
Don't get me started. I'll have to wear the rant hat as well. Let's move on.
On the Heartland page. Yeah, don't show it, Andy. It's too infuriating for Jim. His face will turn as red as Sterling's shirt if you bring it up. All right. So yeah, and we had this very important question from Darren T, who says, is Santa's sleigh zero carbon at the tailpipe? I would estimate no, because I think methane is probably produced by those reindeer as well. Although usually the methane they're talking about is burped, not necessarily from the tailpipe. So
I don't know what tail end.
yeah, this is a question for Anthony from Mr. J.R. Kank. Or MJR Kank, sorry about that, who says, when did they start using scare terms like atmospheric river to describe weather?
You know, I don't know what the specific date was, but I know that it goes back in the meteorology text. I remember hearing it in meteorology school in the late 70s, early 80s time frame. But I think what's happened is that the media has grabbed onto it, as something that they want to talk about to make it sound scarier or bigger or whatever. And so that's been the real change. And from my observations, that's been in about a decade ago when they really started to pick up on that term.
Bomb cyclone.
Yeah, bomb cyclone, the polar vortex. Back in the 70s, we called it the circumpolar vortex. We were well aware of it, We used to get it in on these fax charts, these giant fax charts. This fax machine would send out these charts from the Weather Service, and we could see it, and we would trace it, and it looked like this big starfish on the North Pole down like this on top of the globe, and the tentacles would waver, and now they turned it into something evil instead of something natural. Anytime one of those tentacles gets a little deeper than, it gets a little too close for comfort, and the temperatures start plummeting, like it's happening in eastern Canada right now, the media goes ballistic with polar vortex.
I liked it when they called it the Alberta Clipper. That just sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
I think all of these terms, they might be scare terms, but I think they're all kind of fun.
Well, we all know now that these tentacles are signs that H.P. Lovecraft's mythology was true. These old gods from the sea, they still control the weather.
Polar Cthulhu is on the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we'll call it next. All right. Nothing says Washington and Oregon are ran by liberal wackos. Why aren't they deep blue as well? This is with regards to the energy costs chart from earlier.
I'm going to channel the graduate and say one word: hydro.
Heavily subsidized hydro. The rest of the country subsidized the construction of those dams, and now they benefit from the cheap electricity they generate.
Yeah, there was a court ruling on the high voltage transmission lines that were taking that hydroelectricity through California to other states that wanted a virtue signal. They were getting carbon-free electricity. That the court ruled that California could actually take the electricity first. So, yeah. We continue to prop up other states, even though they have incredibly bad policies, and it needs to stop.
All right. Scott Clay asks us to explain the Jones Act. Does anyone have a good, concise description of it?
An act of 1920 that put in place that really was meant to encourage manufacturing of shipbuilding in the United States. And it said if you were exporting goods from the U.S. to U.S. territories, they had to be on an American-made vessel and an American-flagged vessel. So you had to be manufactured in the U.S. and crewed by Americans. And that's one of the reasons why there's only about 1 or 2 U.S. manufactured LNG vessels on the planet, and they're smaller. And so most LNG vessels are massive. And none of them are made in America. And that's why you can't export LNG from Maryland and go about 150, 200 nautical miles up the shore and offload it into northeastern United States, because there just aren't any Jones Act compliant vessels that would meet those terms. So they have to get it from Trinidad and Tobago on foreign shipped vessels. So not a fan of the Jones Act. It needs to go. It really hurts places like Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, our territories that are offshore, that are sometimes limited in the ability to get American goods because there aren't American ships.
Imagine that, a federal policy intended to protect a domestic industry that ends up destroying or hurting the economy. Look, the Jones Act comes up every time we have an energy crisis. Every time energy prices spike, they say, well, why can't we just ship stuff from Louisiana to Massachusetts? Why can't we ship stuff from Texas to Mississippi or someplace like that? And the Jones Act is the reason, right?
Yeah. I've made the case that Texas should annex Puerto Rico, make it the 255th county of Texas, welcome them to our legislature. We could turn that into an incredible tourism spot, better than it is now. And then they could get our natural gas, our propane, our liquids. They could fire back up their manufacturing. They used to manufacture medicine, pharmaceuticals on Puerto Rico. We lost all of that over to China. We should bring that back in Puerto Rico, make it part of Texas. The flags are similar. I think they would love to have a Texas flag flying over Puerto Rico.
And
again.
And we could drill off the coast. 10 miles out would be Texas's share of it, as opposed to normal 3. So we could start getting some oil pumped out there in the East Coast.
Yeah,
that sounds very insurrection-y to me. You guys got to be careful. We'll get this channel banned.
Okay, we're taking Puerto Rico. We're taking Greenland.
That's right.
We'll take Alberta.
Make America conquerors again. Yeah.
Yes.
Go Texas. Go
And
Texas.
the moon is ours. I'm just saying. Above Us Only Sky says, question for Anthony. Could you explain the effect of the polar vortex or on the polar vortex by stratospheric warming and the higher probability of bad winters in the Northern Hemisphere? Thank you.
To explain it correctly, I don't have enough time in this program, to be honest with you. It's a very complex interaction. But let's just say that, yes, stratospheric warming does have an effect on the polar vortex, and it does make it change. It does increase certain outbreaks and so forth, but that's all I'm going to leave it at.
Yeah, and that's a related question from Bogus, who says, if the polar vortex was cold weather seeping down south due to warming in the Arctic, wouldn't the effect primarily happen in summer rather than winter?
No, simply because we have a migration of the jet stream further north during the summer. Actually, I'm going to post up here, Andy, if you will go to our channel for this show. I just posted up a picture that I think might be really fun to talk about. It's a matter of perspective. I don't know if you can pull it up or not, but there it is. Charles Rotto sent this to me just a few minutes ago. There it is. There's cold, and then there's Florida cold. Really? And seriously, the people down in Florida right now are just, beside themselves because they're talking about bitter cold and so forth. But up north, we've got minus 32 in Grand Forks. Well, that's just a normal winter for those folks. And if this thing had shown some parts of Alberta, you would have seen even lower temperatures. I got invited to go to a Christmas party in Toronto by a Facebook friend of mine who's a big advocate of climate realism. And I decided not to go because it was too cold. I just didn't want to be in Toronto this time of year with those kinds of temperatures. But, I've been through it. I lived in Indiana and I grew up in that area. I've been into Chicago, and it's just something you get through. And these outbreaks are not in any way connected to climate change, although the media would like you to think so.
Absolutely. But of course, as we discussed last week, this winter cold is because of La Nina, but the heat from last year was not because of El Nino. It was because of climate change. Anyway, all right. So do we know from Wheelman the loss per mile on electricity? Not off the top of my head, but Isaac might.
I don't. Yeah, I'd have to check that out. But I know there is certain loss in that, and that's just another reason.
All right.
Wasteful.
Sorry, we might be able to look that one up for you, but we are going to move along. Okay. Mike.
It's about, I just checked it. And, folks, Google is your friend. It's 1% to 2% for long distance high voltage transmission lines, while local power lines are higher, around 4% to 6% per mile. So there you go.
Incredible. Wow.
All right. Mike asks, are we past just pointing out the sustainable is an oxymoron when applied to green sources?
I got to share a story on this one. It's so funny because I was bragging about an international drilling company that hasn't made commitments to ESG or to the Paris Accords. And I was telling this, and it turns out I was talking to somebody in the Permian Basin who was a vendor to this company. And they said, hey, that company just gave me a call and they asked me what my sustainability plan was. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. They're calling and asking about sustainability. And I was like, and he said, yeah. And I said, well, what did you tell them? And the response was to remain profitable. And I'm like, well, what was their response? And he said, it checked the box. They have a plan. They have a plan to be sustainable. And so that's really sustainability that we talk about in the Permian Basin, is to remain profitable so that you're around to provide jobs for your employees and to provide energy for the world.
I want to go back to the previous thing. I thought about that. I mean, I knew it was bad, but when you think about all the wind out in West Texas, all that wind in northwest Texas, right? It's not even near the south. Most of it is in northwest Texas. And you think about those wires running down to Austin or to Houston or even to Dallas. You're talking hundreds of miles of wires. So at 5 to 8% loss of energy along the line, you're getting almost nothing delivered. They're spinning, they're generating electricity, but it's not getting where it needs to go. Like, that's crazy.
But the feeling that you're saving the planet, Sterling, that's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. Granted, you've destroyed the earth, but you're saving the planet.
Well, you got to burn a few forests to save the trees.
Exactly. And that's what Gavin Newsom's doing. And then he thinks he's the arsonist that's calling the fire department and wants to break both arms, patting himself on the back.
Yeah.
All right. Kite Man Music asks, how much of the whole climate hype is caused by the huge amounts of money that have been made in trying to combat it?
A lot of it, because, they burn that money and all that waste heat goes into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Referring to, I think, the New York Times article, or the article that was talking about the EPA stuff, Stephen Fraser asks if we'll provide the link. I think normally we have the links in the YouTube description. If not now, then we'll have them up there later.
Yeah, I'll drop all the stories that we pulled up on screen into the thing. I can actually do it right now.
Okay, there you go. All righty. Look at that. Look at this service on a live show. It's wonderful.
Let me bring up a real quick topic. I don't know if anyone saw it besides me, but I think it's interesting. So at COP30, everyone loves Lula, and everyone loves Brazil. And they had the indigenous people there at COP30. They weren't the main thing. They did their protests. They were kept outside the main thing, but they were nice to look at. It was like a zoo. You could look at them through the windows and say, ooh, we care about those people. So since COP30 is over, I don't know if anyone's seen this, the Brazilian Senate passed a law that would permanently put in place all the stolen land that miners and loggers have gotten in the rainforest from these indigenous peoples. It would say, well, we're going to start from now. We're not going to try and get these people off the land they've been mining and logging for years. We're not going to give it back to the people who we said we've been defending for decades. Instead, we're going to start from now. They get to keep this. Too bad for you. That's a liberal leftist government supposedly caring about the indigenous people who's helping to destroy them.
Earlier, Anthony said they didn't do squat at COP30, and he was, no pun intended, it was true. Their toilets were clogged up for 8 to 12 hours, and so you couldn't even do squat. I mean, it was just incredible. The forest that they cut down so that people could actually get there. There was farmers that were interviewed that their farms were completely destroyed. Well, at least now I guess there's a new law that, hey, you get the destroyed land. Congratulations. You can't farm acai berries anymore because we cut that forest down. So maybe it's better when they don't do squat at COP30.
Yeah.
The audience is going to be very happy I avoided saying a joke that came to mind just as you were saying that. So we'll just leave it there.
Montana Blues asks, Lee Zeldin has made a big deal of firing a few thousand EPA employees. Why hasn't he fired all of them?
Well, I would say, just like in any organization, there's rational people and then there's crazy people. So I think he probably said to the latter, bye-bye.
I would just say that it's a good start.
Yeah.
Gotta have something to give us on Christmas.
Are you comparing environmentalists to lawyers?
Yeah, I think too many people these days kind of freak out when they're not given perfect, but what they are given good. And
Yeah.
what's happened so far with Trump's EPA stuff is good. It's not perfect, but I'll take it. I'll take what's happened so far. I'd like more, but we'll take it. All right. Let me see. Let me find somebody who I haven't seen yet. Oh, Lychee2, who is on Rumble, says, how high would CO2 concentrations be if we burned all fossil fuels on the planet? And I think this study was done to disprove RCP 8.5.
Yeah, we don't have enough fossil fuels to burn on the planet, but
there's also the significant diminishing effect of CO2 in the atmosphere. Like we're at a point where it's like has no effect.
Well, there's probably more carbon stored in carbonaceous rocks rather than fossil fuels.
Yeah.
You can't burn limestone for fuel. You can burn it to make you can use it to make cement, but a lot of that carbon is stored in rock.
I mean, you wouldn't even need to calculate this. You could probably just go back into paleo history and look at whatever the peak atmospheric CO2 concentration was during those periods and estimate that that's almost what you would get, other than the stuff that gets stored in the rock that's not fossil fuel rock.
I just did some research with one of my AI bots, which I trust because we've tuned it properly. And it says we would get worst case scenario somewhere around 1,000 parts per million CO2, but in a more conservative estimate, somewhere around 800. There you go.
Well, yeah, I've been at a meeting event recently, and I'll bring my CO2 monitor from time to time, and it's not uncommon to hit 1,200 parts per million in a conference room when you're speaking to an audience.
Right.
Yep. Alrighty. Although I don't think I would enjoy being on the planet if it was up to 1,200 parts per million on the planet, because I'd be yawning every 2 seconds for the rest of my life, and that would suck. All right. David says there is flooding in the Pacific Northwest right now. How long before this flooding is blamed on climate change?
It's already happened.
Yeah.
In fact, I posted up a notice on this 3 days ago on our communication channel at Heartland saying this is coming. And, on cue, they're out there blaming that on climate change, even though there's precedents for it in this area for significant floods in the past. And, it's all because we have an atmospheric river going through that area. Also precedents in the past. So, but climate change.
Undoubtedly, they had written a rapid attribution study.
Right.
They had it already written before the flooding came, so they could blame it because that's how those things work.
Was Sheldon Whitehouse on the Senate floor screaming about climate change?
Sheldon White's only.
Yeah. He was on the Senate floor last year talking about this study in Nature that was recently pulled. First, they did a correction to it. They had some mathematical errors in Uzbekistan relating to their GDP, which threw off the numbers from $60 trillion in climate damage to 20 some odd trillion dollars, a massive correction. And so the authors came in and corrected it. And then just in the last week, Nature has pulled this study. I published a piece on my Substack asking Sheldon Whitehouse to please correct the record back in September when the calculation error was found. I don't believe he's corrected the record yet. He's one of these people that claims to fight disinformation all the time, yet he is now on record of some false and misinformation that's been spewed before the Senate, the United States Senate, and is still in the journal. He's the only person that can correct it himself. So there's a big call for Sheldon Whitehouse to correct the record. And now that Nature has completely removed that study.
Who knew?
He won't do it right away. He won't do it because he's under the microscope. He'll do it sometime later, like a Friday night at 12 a.m. or something when nobody's looking.
He won't do it. He just won't do it.
No.
Being a climate alarmist means never having to apologize, say you're sorry or you're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to address a couple more questions and then we're going to have to end it because we are running up against our overtime here. So really quick, Joffrey says, The bite of net zero is really starting to bite in Australia. Energy costs are skyrocketing. Can we borrow Trump for a while? Yes, you can. If you let us annex you as well, then you can borrow Trump. You can have Trump for as long as we have Trump. All right.
First day of Australia, that'd be great.
And this is very bizarre. So Dave is one of our frequent viewers. He says, Linnea is right. Thank you. The IPCC is getting worse. AR6 endorses homeopathic climatology, which assert that the memory of CO2 formerly in the air has just as much warming effect. I don't know if this is true, but when I saw it, I thought that sounds like one of those inclusions that they would have in the sections that talk about like tribal approaches to climate change or something, like ancestral global warming memory.
Native knowledge. You got to use native knowledge.
Native knowledge. Anthony, do you have any idea what he's talking about here? Because this is interesting. No. Yes. I don't doubt that they would.
Science does not care about your feelings.
Yeah. All right. Paul Clark says, what does it mean when they say it was 500 times greater likelihood because of climate change when it comes to extreme weather events? I thought this was a really good, important question.
Well, it just means that they're inflating the numbers. That's all.
What it means is
it's as simple as that. There's no basis for this 500 times greater likelihood other than an estimate, some model, some projection. That's all these folks do. They make projections based on what they think, and then they dial it in, and then they get a fantastic number, and then they create a paper, then they use that to get headlines, and the media laps it up as if it's like, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And repeat, rinse. That's the whole process of going on with climate change alarmism.
Yeah,
what do you mean? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if you go to climaterealism.com, we have a whole bunch of articles. If you use the search bar feature and you search attribution studies, you should come up with a bunch of articles where we give descriptions on, from various weather events that they tried to say this was 500 times more, rainfall than would have happened without climate change. We usually give at least some kind of a short description of what they mean by that. So you can look at some of those. There are a whole bunch of sources that will talk about why these attribution studies, even from alarmist climate scientists who will say that they're not really good to rely on.
Yeah, look, what it is they run a series of climate models that they say mimics the climate accurately, as if there were no increase in CO2 that we've experienced. So that's the baseline model. They have the assumptions about how CO2 drives temperature. They have all sorts of assumptions, but we have this base model. We run a series of forecast test, and it says, okay, this is what the likelihood of this flooding is under those models. Then they run a different series of models, same models, but a different series based on where the CO2 levels are now and the other greenhouse gases. And it says, this is how much flooding there is. And it's 500 times more than it is in the other model. The problem is both sets of models don't reflect reality. The base model doesn't reflect what the temperatures were like before, doesn't reflect cloud cover, doesn't reflect all sorts of things. So it's just completely made up. But it's based on model projections of what the Earth would have looked like, sort of a counterfactual, what the Earth would have looked like if we hadn't had all that CO2, and what the Earth should look like, not what it does, but what it should look like based on the models with all the CO2.
Yeah, and one of the main organizations that does this admitted, their founder admitted, that the reason why they started doing this was to provide ammunition for lawsuits against fossil fuel companies to try to attribute individual storms to fossil fuel production, which is batty. But, the media loves them. They're basically just, media feed.
Here's an image to keep in your mind of what these model outputs look like. If you've ever seen the drawings of cars from the 60s of Big Daddy Roth, where you've got this crazy person running this car and the flames coming out the back, that's the output of these models.
Many of us and climate realists know, don't trust the models.
All right, that's it.
All right.
Jim, I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. Cue the music, Andy, because we love the closing music because it's so soothing. But it does mean that the show has come to an end. I want to thank everybody, especially in the chat. We've had such a good time with all of our live viewers who leave questions that we address for you. So remember, bring some friends, help spread the word about this program because, we're suppressed by the algorithm at YouTube and Google and Alphabet. So we need your help. Please do so. I want to thank our streaming partners for every one of these broadcasts: junkscience.com, CFAX, CO2 Coalition, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and Heartland UK Europe. Also, thank you very much, Jason Isaac, for being our guest today. It's always fun to have you on. We'll have you on again.
Great to keep living the high carbon lifestyle. I'm going to have some grass-fed beef, the high carbon beef. I'm drinking my high carbon coffee. Have a high carbon weekend.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, let's get those hats out in the world. I love those.
Yeah,
we have to do that. Right. Always visit climaterealism.com, which Linnea mentioned. That's where we counter the BS you get in the mainstream media about the climate every single week. Go to climateataglance.com to get the latest data and information so you can understand what is actually happening to our planet. And go to Energy at a Glance to find out why green energy is not really green and not really great for the planet and doesn't really generate a lot of electricity, because you learn a lot of background on that too. And always go to heartland.org where you can subscribe to Sterling Burnett's Climate Change Weekly newsletter. And please consider supporting this program at heartland.org/TCRS. Friday, a week from today, will be our last Climate Realism show of 2025. Maybe we'll come up with something fun and special to mark that occasion and the holidays. But until then, we will not see you again until next week. Bye-bye.